The U.S. Supreme Court declined to consider Oklahoma's case against the Affordable Care Act subsidies. Oklahoma Attorney General Scott Pruitt has asked the court to pair the state's case with a similar case out of Virginia and bypass the U.S. 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. The issue at the center of the cases is whether the health insurance law allows the U.S. government to subsidize insurance policies purchased on federal or state exchanges. Chris Castile joins us now from a frigid Washington, D.C. with more on the case. And Chris, hope you're staying warm out there.
Yeah, thanks. Luckily we're not in the path of the blizzard, but it is pretty cold.
Well, we're enjoying 60s and 70s here, but I'm not going to rub that in. We'll get back to the story at hand here. Why bypass the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals?
I think what the Attorney General wanted to do, and it is an unusual step for him to try to go from the district court level up to the Supreme Court level without getting an intermediary decision from the federal appeals court. You've already had a couple of appeals court rules on it. And Scott Pruitt was actually the first person to file a lawsuit of this kind. It was in September of 2012. It was the first one to challenge the whole meaning of the Affordable Care Act and whether it allowed people to get, lower income people to get help to buy private insurance, whether they were on state or federal exchanges. But there was a judge in Oklahoma, a federal judge in Oklahoma, over in Muskogee, a guy named Ronald White, who was so slow, and it took him 2 full years to come to a decision on this case. In the meantime, it had already gone through 2 district courts, one in D.C., one in Virginia, and all the way through their appeals court by the time this guy ruled on it. So it's a big question, big issue, and the Supreme Court took the Virginia case. And Scott Pruitt, so wanted to be involved in this, asked the Supreme Court to take the Oklahoma case along with the Virginia case, even though the 10th Circuit Federal Appeals Court hadn't a chance to rule on it, and they declined to do it. So it's a really simple question. You don't really need, in this case, another case that brings the same question, and the court just decided, look, it's not worth breaking. What's a pretty important, structure for process in order to have 2 cases of this kind.
We're chatting with Chris Castile out of Washington, D.C. on the phone today, and no one likes a slow judge, that's for sure. Chris, one final question for you. If the high court rules in favor of states like Virginia and Oklahoma, let's talk about the impact. What kind of impact would that have? Huge.
This is a huge case. You could argue that, and a lot of people would argue, it's the biggest case before the court this term, and that even goes for having same-sex marriage and now death penalty cases before, because if the court rules in Oklahoma, in Pruitt's way, that you have to live in a state that has established its own exchange, its own marketplace to buy healthcare coverage, in order to get help from the federal government to do it. Well, only 14 states have set up their exchange, which means 36 states, including Oklahoma, do not have the type of exchange that would allow people to get subsidized. And these policies are expensive. And most of the people, I think it's 80% of the people who have bought health insurance out on these exchanges in the United States have gotten subsidies to do it. So if you no longer have, the federal help to be able to afford these, healthcare policies, plus you've got an individual mandate that makes you do it, I just think the whole thing falls apart. And that's kind of what I think the consensus is that if the Oklahoma position prevails, then really they can't enforce this on poor people. They can't make them buy health insurance coverage that they absolutely cannot afford. So it's an absolutely huge case.
Big decision coming up this summer. Chris Castile from the Oklahoma's Washington, D.C. Bureau. Sir, thanks for your time today and stay warm.
All right, thanks, Dave. Take care.
More coverage from Mr. Castile every day in the Oklahoman and online at newsok.com.